bunny rabbits today. The techniques are pretty simple. It takes just about an ounce of wool and a little bit of wool for the details. And before you know it, you'll have yourself a cute little bunny. So the other things you're going to need are foam felting pad. This is a 9x12 studio size. You'll see pad down here. This is just a large one that I have on my felting table. But this is the size that I recommend using. You could use a half a size of this because the bunnies aren't too big. You'll also need felting needles. These are my super duper, my Felt Alive super duper felting needles. I recommend, you don't need them all. If you have your favorites, use them. My favorites are the yellow. It's a 40T, a 40 triangle blade. Single blade, that one I use a lot. I'll use it throughout the workshop. The double yellow 40T, you'll see me using this one predominantly throughout the workshop. And you might want a black, a 36T, around for attaching the parts together. There are a variety of others, a quad. I like the blue quads. That'll make the ears and the feet go pretty fast. Always have a sewing needle. We never have to sew with it, but it's for pulling, stretching, and manipulating the wool. I also recommend having a pair of sharp little sewing or embroidery scissors. And that's about it. That's all you need for making your little bunny rabbits. I have a little bit of white wool, some brown wool, and some pink for the nose, and some blue for the eyes. You can choose your own colors, obviously. And the color I've chose is my Felt Alive needle felting wool that I kettle dyed here in my studio. This is a nice seafoam green, maybe a seafoam blue, depends. I don't know. But it's got some variegation in the color, and it makes the bunnies really cute. This one's a light blue. And you'll see here I have all the parts already made. It doesn't take a lot of parts to make this little bunny. And so we'll just begin by learning how to make these parts. And we'll talk a lot about the whys and the hows and the fun of needle felting as we go. But we're all set. So the first thing you need is your main color of your bunny. So I need about an ounce for the bunny. And so let me just get this apart and I'll show you the best way to start handling the wool. I'm going to set our little model guy aside. So I'm just opening up the wool. There might be some smaller pieces inside. Generally what I want to do is get wool that fits in my hand. This hangs over my hand. It doesn't fit. So just, you see I grab it with my whole hands rather than my fingertips to pull it apart. And then I'll stack it up and you can see now that it fits much better in my hand. There's still a little overlap. If you can pull it apart and put it right up there. The main thing is that you don't have so much wool that it's too hard to handle, that it's a mess and that you're wrestling with it rather than felting with it. So I'm just going to try to pull off sheets to get prepared, sheets of wool roughly the size of my hand. And again, you can see how I pull it with my whole hand. If I pull it with my fingertips, I'm going to get little strips. And we'll need that later for wrapping joints. We'll need to pull it like that. But for now, we're just separating maybe a third of the wool into some sheets. That'll get you started. I just have them stacked up here. I'm going to set them off to the side. So the first shape we're going to make is the main shape for the body, which is, you can see it right here. There it is, next to it. So we're going to make this, it's an egg shape. These bunnies are made of lots of little egg shapes. So what I need to do is get about, let's get about 3 sheets. Let's get about 4 sheets. You never want to go more than 5 sheets because it gets too hard to handle. So I've stacked them up. They fit in my hand reasonably well. So now what I want to do is get this as close to this shape as I can before I ever start needle felting. And I want to be ready with my double yellow needle. If you don't have a double yellow needle, be ready with your single yellow needle. So what I want to do is just kind of pull all that fluff around, get my thumb out of there, and you'll see I've folded it. It's just nicely folded now. So I want to fold it again, right down the middle. I'm using the whole side of my thumb to do these folding motions. So now I want to use the side of my hand and pull all these loose fibers down and around. And I want to be able to feel this and not feel a bunch of air in it. Like here, this fluffy end is just soft. This is much firmer. So you can see the egg starting just based on how I'm holding my hands. So this fluff is going to be the skinny side of the egg, so I want to just gently pull that over and get it tucked in. And now I want to come down from the middle again. And you can see how I'm holding onto this tail. I don't want to let go of this hand, and I want to start pulling on this tail, giving some pressure so it can wrap around itself, right around this little egg shape. You can see I'm still forming it. It's still turning in an egg shape, and here comes this tail right around the middle. It's a little awkward at first, and it looks a little clumsy, but that's going to make a lovely egg shape. Right here is where I want to focus now. I don't want to let go. I'm just going to lay this on my needle felting pad, and I'm keeping my finger pressed against this shape, and I'm going to grab my double yellow needle. And I'm just going to start gently poking. I don't go in any deeper than the blades. You don't have to poke all the way through to your felting pad. Just gently go back and forth along the edge of this shape. Don't let go. Don't let any of the pressure off your fingers because it'll still expand. Now I'm going to turn it just a little, slide my fingers over just a little. Here's where I felted that first row. It's not even a row, just back and forth a little bit. So again, turn it again. You might feel some really soft pockets in there. Just work with them just the best you can. We're going to have opportunity to go back in and finish that. So you see how I'm keeping on rolling it along, and I'm getting close to where I started. So once I feel that the wool is kind of relaxing my grip on it here with my finger, and I don't feel like it's wanting to expand and fluff back up. And I was right, I let go, and I've gone around the whole thing just enough to hold the fibers together. So now I want to start sculpting it into an egg shape. It's kind of long. This would make a long skinny bunny if I want to go with that look. That's cute, but I think I want a little more fluff to my bunny. So I want to start getting this into the shape I want just by squishing it. So I'm going to hold it together like this. See, it's shortened it. It's going to stretch back out to that first shape. So I want to needle felt it into this shape. So again, not too deep. And you can see how I'm pointing the needle towards the tip. I need to be careful as I start getting closer to my fingers that I get my fingers out of the way. So I'm just kind of working around that skinny end. So I want to turn it again and just keep working over it, felting. So again, just keep rolling that around. When you get to this tip here, and you don't want to worry if there's lumps or bumps because we're going to cover that stuff as we build up the bunny body. So, but you do want it well felted. So as we work our way down to the tip, you can sort of hold your egg and taper that tip. That's going to be his neck. So you don't want it too skinny because bunnies really don't have pronounced necks. So I'm just working that down a little bit and just keep going over it and work on this end, and it's forming into a nice little egg. So with every poke you do, you're strengthening it up, you're tangling those fibers a little bit more. Those little barbs on the needles are catching and tangling, and this piece is getting stronger. So I want to keep going over it. This one, you can pull up a little bit of fuzz, but you can't pull up the whole structure anymore. I've gone over it a few more minutes than what I showed you here. And then there's another test you want to do is the squish test. I can feel some hollow spots in this one from where I wrapped it kind of loosely. So all I would do for that, in this case, is to strengthen up. I don't know if you can see it. It's really soft and squishy there. And I also haven't felt it around it enough, but I feel it's kind of hollow. This one feels even and dense inside. So the easiest way to fix a hollow feeling egg is just to wrap it again. And so I'm just going to take one sheet. It's fairly thin. It's one of those I pulled off in the beginning. And I just want to hold it and start wrapping it. Just pretty much like I did the first time, but you just have this thin piece, and I'm pulling it tight, and it's wrapping around all that felted wool, and it's filling in that little hollow spot. So just going to focus on that little tail that I wrapped around. There's always a little tail at the end when you do an egg. So there we go. And just quickly go over the whole surface because it's felted under there, but it's a much more solid shape. Because you just put raw wool on, there's not raw wool, a new sheet of wool, it hasn't been felted in yet, so it means you do have to go over it one more time. Don't worry about little pocks and bumps from the felting needles. That's gonna all get taken care of as we go. So there I fixed a hollow egg. And they're really close to the same size, and I'll keep going over this one until it's as nicely felted. You can see the shape is better. And to get the shape, you just keep rolling it around, and you'll see it coming together in no time. So, and this one's getting close. So I'll roll this one around, needle it a few more times around the edges, and around the outside, and we'll be good to go. So there's our body shape out of the way. The next part we're going to do is the head. The head's another egg shape, only it's smaller. So your body should be looking pretty good, your main egg for your body. The next shape we're going to make is a smaller egg. It's probably half the size, a third of the size maybe. And it just really depends. A much bigger head won't hurt anything. You probably don't want to go too small because it might look a little silly, but a bigger heads always are cuter, I think. It's up to you though, but that's about the proportions I'm going to go for. So we started out with 4 sheets of wool the size of our hands for this one, so I would say let's go with 2. So again, the same thing. If you remember, we held on so that there's some fluff hanging over. You can sort of see that egg shape in your hand shape already there. So I don't need to hold on too tight, but I don't want to let the wool ever escape me. So I'm just going to fold it over my thumb, and before I pull it too tight, I get my thumb out of there, and that starts a nice fold. So I'm going to pull this over my thumb again, and that gets a nice dense center of your egg going. So switch into this to my right hand, and I'm just going to use my left palm to just gently pull it over there. You see my thumb's getting buried, so I'll pull my thumb out of there, and there it's starting to form that little egg shape. Just kind of manipulating it and get my hands in there so I can control the wool the best. Slip that fuzz right under my thumb. So now I'm going to come around again from the middle, from the center and down, and I'm running out of wool on the sides. It's all down here in this little tail. This little tail is crucial to making a nice strong egg shape. So you can see I'm pulling on it. It's like you're wrapping something around this egg shape now at this point. So just keep wrapping right around. Again, just lay it on your pad. Don't let go. Keep your finger right along it and get your single or double yellow needle and just gently right alongside your finger. Give it about a little quarter turn there. Another. And this shape is looking really long, so I showed you how to shorten them before. Same thing with this smaller part. The main thing is that you get this wool contained into a somewhat of an egg shape. This is looking more like a little tube, but that's okay. This is the thin end down here, I believe. Fat little bunny face is cute, so I won't worry about getting it too thin either on that end. And so I want to kind of squish it. I want it a little bit shorter than that so it's not so elongated. So I'm going to squish it. So you can see I'm going right down the center of it. Just felt that down a little bit there. And I'm still squishing it. It's going to look a little wrinkly when you do that, but that all felts down. It all shrinks with every poke. So just kind of squishing it still between my hands as I go around it now. And again, I'm just rolling it around as I poke, kind of feeding it into my jabbing motion here. Keeping my fingers out. So there's the little head shape. I would go over it a few more times, but all in all, and this is gonna get a lot of stuff out of it here, like ears and the little muzzle and the nose, the cheek area. So we just need a solid foundation for all that. So if it's a little lumpy, don't worry about it. This one's a little bit bigger than my model head, but that is just fine. It'll be just every bit as cute. So we have two parts done. The head and the body. Those are some big ones. So the next parts to do are these little legs. Simple little egg shapes. The only difference is they're slightly flattened. See my two little model shapes? So we use 2 sheets for the head, 4 sheets for the body. So these we only need 1 sheet. Doesn't feel like very much wool. And so what I do like to do is tear those in half because these aren't very long shapes either. So I just pulled that apart and I'm going to stack that together. And that's what I need to make this shape. So again, fold it over. I do it the same way for these littler parts, but I use more of my fingertips and thumb tips than the whole side of my hand. So just try to follow along there. And just pull that right over now with my thumb. Again on this side. One more time, fold it down the middle. And I'm going to push these fibers over here this way. And there we go. You can see it's a little egg still, and so just lay it right down. And as I want to start thinking about flattening it right away when I first lay it down. So just give it a few extra pokes before you turn it. And when you turn it all the way over instead of rolling it like that. So that'll give you a nice little flattened shape. And that was enough to hold it down. It's much longer and skinnier than this one, so again, we just need to start kind of manipulating it a little bit like clay, but poking it to make it hold it together. You want to make sure that you've felted this point, this end, because that's going to be the ankle, where the ankle joint is. So you want this fairly strong. And if you find this piece is too small and flimsy, you can see it's much thinner. It's thinner, it's not as sturdy. So what I think I didn't use enough wool. So instead of 1 sheet, I'm going to use a sheet and a half for the next one, but let me show you how I'll fix, because I have to make a matching pair. Where we didn't for the head and the body. So this is a little trickier to have to make a matching pair. So I'm going to take another sheet of wool here, I'm going to tear it in half. So instead of the 1 sheet that I have now 1 1/2 that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to, just like I wrapped the egg to make it stronger in the when I showed you in that first part, I'm going to do the same thing to make this just slightly larger and thicker and stronger. So just tucking it around, making sure there's no loose ends showing, and then just feeding that tail. I don't want to pull it as tight as I did the egg because it'll make it round instead of flat, so I just kind of gently rolled it around on there. Turn it over rather than roll it quarter turns. And again, just go over it a couple times. So, it would probably be most helpful if I just showed you again how to make this shape rather than asking you to make two. So we'll go through it one more time. And strengthened up a little bit. So let's go through this one more time. I'm going to start with, this sheet feels a little bit thicker. As you learn to needle felt, you get a little more in tune to how much wool you have in your hand. If you remember, I took that one and tore it in half. I feel like it's a little bit longer, so it's going to have a little more of that other half sheet. I want it to make sure it's big enough. So again, I'm going to fold it over, my thumb out of the way, fold it over again. So it's starting, you can feel the stretch on it. Push those fibers over. Push them over without folding. You won't see a big fold there. They naturally curve. And again, pull those over through the middle, and repeat, feeding those fibers in. Here we go. Lay it down. Back and forth, kind of flattening it out a little bit. You don't want to smash it or needle felt it into the pad. You just want to start creating a flattened shape. So then I just keep sculpting it and shaping it. And this one I think is going to be really close to the same size as this one. But you want them pretty close to exact so your bunny will stand by himself and not topple over all the time. So once I get this one felted, we'll kind of check them, and we have lots of opportunity to fix them, to make them equally long and thick. So I'd go over that a few more times because it's just not quite done yet. And it's still going to be slightly bigger than this one, I can just tell, even if I go over it a few more times. I don't want to keep going over it and just keep shrinking it just to make it the same size because it's going to get a lot harder. We don't want them to be one's really thick and hard and one really soft and flimsy. We want them to feel really similar. You shouldn't be able to tell them apart by squeezing them. So you can see when I match them up, one's slightly longer. So again, all you have to do is just a little bit of wool does an amazing thing. I just want to add a little bit more. I don't want to add any more to the thin end, but let me just wrap this around, manipulate that and stretch and pull it around. Just the fatter end of the egg, and then needle felt that down. And it should have made the difference that you were looking for. And if not, do it again. But it did. So there, we have two nicely, yours will look nicer than mine. Yours should look like this. You can see these are a little not quite shaped right, just because I haven't sculpted them enough. So keep sculpting those shapes till they look really nice and even. And then we'll move along to the paws. And your bunny, my little bunny says, yay, you're doing good so far. So our little bunny's starting to come along. We should have a head, a body, and both little legs. And the next parts we're going to do are the little paws. Little arms and paws all in one shape. So if you'll notice, these are even smaller than the leg shapes. So it just tells me we need less wool. So I started with 1.5 sheets for those other ones, this is actually kind of longer than what I wanted. So these are thin little sheets. Actually, they're probably half sheets. So let's just try to remember what I used there. So for these smaller shapes, it's almost easier if you just try to stack up two equal size pieces right in the beginning than trying to remember exactly how fat they were. When you start pulling wool apart like that, the little sheets kind of break up. So these look really similar. They feel really similar. So let's just do this. So we're just going to make nice little egg shapes. These are kind of flattened too, and these are okay to be a little softer than the egg shapes that for the legs, because they don't need to support anything. So again, we're just doing the same exact technique. Fold it over twice. Push those fuzzies around with your thumbs. Fold it over again. And it feels small, but it's going to be a fine little arm and paw. And again, just these smaller pieces, you have to take a little more care not to stab yourself. And I'm going to roll this one. This one's going to be flattened out just a little bit at the end where his paw is, but the rest of it's going to be fairly egg-shaped. On these smaller shapes, the double needle can, I feel it bouncing into the wool. It's making my wool bounce. I'm losing a little bit of control, so I like to, if for these smaller parts, I find it's just easier to use a single needle. Gets the job done. Glides in smoother, and you just have more control. So I'm just going over this end, this whole egg, rolling it around. Yeah, when my little parts start bouncing too much, I usually have to back off on this, the needle I'm using. The doubles just take a little more force to pierce the wool, and the smaller shapes just don't require it. So these are the model parts. Just kind of stretch it out just a little bit, and it's nearly equal. So then I'm just going to flatten the end out just a little bit. And then I have this pile already made. So again, we'll just go over it one more time. These are the last little egg shapes we're making. The rest are different, so might as well do it one more time so we're all masters at these little eggs. These are the same techniques I use for making dolls, for making my little pups, for making nearly anything that I make. I use these same egg making techniques. So I'm just going to use my single. There's no sense getting out that double and making it bounce so much. And I'm not going down through into the foam. I rarely go down into the foam unless I need to hold the wool there. So, and we'll see that in a moment, but you shouldn't be hearing your needle crunching too much into the foam during all of these methods. It just means you're going too deep. So, and you're bound to break needles by felting like that. Over piercing. The barbs are close to the tip, so you really don't have to go very far. So let's see, let's match them up. They're way off. That one tried to get away. So let me just see if I can't flatten this. Trying to figure out what's the skinny end. Sometimes you lose the skinny end in these pieces. And even on these little tiny ones, you need to build up one end. I want the paws kind of cute and chubby. So I'm just going to wrap it with just a little more wool to make it equal to that size of the first one I made. So there you go. There's all of the main body parts for our little bunny. These little paws are going to be right there like so. So There's his little arms, his little paws. So he's missing ears and feet. There's his little bunny feet. So let's start with the ears. So to make these parts, it's a little bit different, quite a bit different than what we've been doing. We want to make sure that we save enough wool for the feet. We have enough wool here for feet and ears, so we're still doing good. So I'm going to take this strip of wool here. I don't want it in the shape of my hand this time because I want it in the shape of bunny ears. So I'm just going to try to split it right in half. Bunny ears aren't very thick, so one sheet will do. You can see it's how thin it is. The thicker end, if you can feel an end that's really wispy, that should go up towards where the point of the ear, the top of the ear. You want a little thicker where it's going to attach to the head. It gets thinner up here, and here's a little thicker. So this is kind of a fun technique. I call it flat felting. It's to make flat shapes. I use these techniques for making clothes and things like that for my dolls as well. So what I want to do is, you're not going to have a ready-made ear to trace, so I'm not going to do that, but that's the general shape we're going to make, and to do that we're going to draw that right into this fluff of wool with your felting needle. I'm going to use my double yellow. Your single yellow works just fine too. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to just draw an ear shape in, leaving this end open. So depending how big of ears you want, they're going to shrink, so go a little bigger than you want, maybe a third or a fourth bigger than you want. They won't shrink that much, but so you can make them pointy on the end if you want them, whatever kind of bunny you want to make, or you can make them big wide on the end. You can make them really, really long, like a lop-eared bunny. It's just up to you and how much wool you have on hand. So you can see a bunny ear shape in there. And I want to draw another one in on this side. They're not exact, but they're close enough. So now we're going to start felting them. I want to make sure that I don't have like a big, huge, long wisps of wool that when I fold it over goes way over. It looks pretty good, so if you can see what I'm doing, I'm folding it over. And I can feel the line there where I felted, where I drew it in. So I don't want to pull it out, but I want to pull the wool right up to it and just start felting it. Now this side, fold it right over. Again, if it's coming way over this side, you have to hold your hand down and just trim off these extra fluffs. You need enough to fold over, but you don't want a big globby mess. So it has to be kind of neat. So I'm pulling it, and if you can see, I'm kind of stretching it with my fingers. I can see where it's attached into the felting pad. It's gently attached. It's very key to note that you don't want to get carried away stabbing this into the felting pad. And now I'm trying to go fairly shallow. I can't hear too much crunching into the pad, but there is some, and that's okay. But I don't want to be just driving these so deep into the pad that when I pull it up, it's going to take chunks of foam, because it will. Trust me, I know. I learned that the hard way. And then you have to pick little pieces of foam out of your work, and it's just hard on your pads too. So just be careful. Try not to drive it in. Take really short little jabs. Kind of try to hold your needle at an angle as you go. See, I sort of just stretch the wool a little bit, slide my finger along it, and it'll just pull it right up to the line that you drew in. And so you just want to go over it enough at this point that the loose fibers are down. And you can see that we've left some fluff. That's going to be used to attach it to the head, so you don't want to mess with that. So you want to repeat the same thing on the other side. You can see here it's a little something that does come up. I don't have a lot of wool right there to fold over. So the best remedy for that is just to get another little sheet, lay that on there, and redraw that in. And that'll take care of that problem. And you can see I have plenty of wool now to work over that edge. So again, repeat all those steps I showed you. Just use the side of your hand to find that line you drew in. Just back and forth, getting those fibers felted down a bit. So now that we've done that a couple more times, this one's a little fuzzier, so I'm going to demonstrate with this one for the video speed sake. Just a couple more times. I want it where the fibers are at least all felted down slightly. So now I want to peel this off, and I want to be really careful. I don't want to just rip it. I just want to gently peel it, and you'll see where your needles have jabbed the wool in. It didn't pull any foam out, and it really didn't leave many fibers behind, and it shows me that I was gentle with my pad. And it's a pretty floppy shape, so this side hasn't been felted at all. So I'm just going to turn it over and start working it back and forth. I can demonstrate quickly with my blue quad. I love the blue quads. They don't have very many barbs. They're really fine. They're a 40 star. They have a star-shaped blade, and there's only 2 barbs on each blade, and they pierce into the wool almost effortlessly. And so now 4 pokes counts as 1. You can see how that's felting it down in a hurry. I'm going to work along the edges. This tool really helps you get nice clean edges. I'm just going to flop it around a few times. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing the fibers towards the middle of the ear. It's strengthening it up a little bit rather than pushing them down through. It doesn't really do much good. So I'm trying to, you can see how I have my needle, my thumb's hitting my pad, and it's laying really almost perpendicular to my ear, my bunny ear. So again, just going over it. I'm going to turn it over again on this side. Same thing. Now if you don't have a blue quad, you really should get one. But if you don't, you can use your double needle. Might be a little rough. I'm finding it's kind of beating up the wool before it pierces in. So I don't want to use that if it's doing that. By beating it up, you can just feel it pushing the wool before it pierces, and it's just doesn't really, you're just working too hard to get those 2 in at once. So this is sliding right in, but the blue quad just goes fast. So I've gone over that a couple times. I don't want that, so I need to come and address this. If I need to slide those fibers over again to make a sturdier edge. The edge should be pretty equally thick all the way along it. You shouldn't have really thin or thick spots. And to avoid that, you just make sure you don't spend too much time in any one area. Move along a lot, and it gets even pretty quick. So we'll sculpt a little more once it gets on the bunny. We'll sculpt it into the shape and the position we want it. But for now, that's a pretty great bunny ear. It's not as floppy as it was. It holds its shape a lot more. So repeat it with the other side. And when we come back, we will make the little feet. So you can see our little model. He can hop around on his feet. We need to make him pretty good sized and sturdy. We don't want him flimsy. We want him to be able to be alive, but not so thin. So it's very similar to how we did the ears. The ears we made fairly thin. See, it's hard to see on video. It's easier to feel and touch. So I want to save some batting for building up his, attaching his joints and things like that. So I want to make sure there's some batting left here. We're getting close to the end of our ounce already. So we might have to grab into our second ounce. That's why it's always good to have 2 ounces when a project calls for 1. So I've got one piece here. It's a little messy. I'm going to clean it up. But they're fairly thick, not too thick. So I'm going to take my trusty double yellow needle, once I lay them both out side by side, and we're just going to draw some bunny feet in there. Gently piercing the wool into the pad to hold its shape, just like you did the ears. The only thing different about these feet and the ears, besides the thickness, is that you leave fluff on one end of the ears, and on the bunny feet you don't leave any fluff. So I got that one drawn in. I'm going to go ahead and draw the other one in. Close to the same size as you can. And again, you'll have room to sculpt those into the perfect shapes as we go. So I'm just going to start just like I did on the bunny ears, except for, like I said, there's no flap. I'm just gently pulling it up to that line I just drew in. That time I pulled it off a little. I could see it release, but it's still holding up here. So if you pull too tight, too hard, you'll pull your shape right out of your pad, and then it doesn't do much good to hold it. So that's all tacked down, so repeat it on the other side. And as soon as they start holding themselves both together and they look like they're a similar shape, they're rough, they're messy, but now you can pull them off of there and we can sculpt them a little bit more. Still on the same side, I haven't turned it over. Don't worry too much about seams, lines, and bumps and bulges. We'll be able to fix all that once you put it on the bunny. So the main thing is just getting it so it's all held together and somewhat felted. We want to keep it fairly fluffy, but it's going to need to be strong, so go over that a few times. If it gets too hard to pierce with the double, switch to the single. Single yellow 40T is coming through. It's really easy. It's like piercing into butter right now. And it's felting. So, again on this one, it's a little bit of a time saver starting out with the double when you're doing flat work. And don't be afraid to try your double blue too. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it's doing much. Sometimes it feels like it's working hard, so it just depends on, I think it even depends on the humidity when you're felting. Let's try it. Let's try this double blue. It's easier, much easier to pierce into the wool than the double yellow, and it's felting it nice. So it really just depends on what you like. The single yellow certainly pierces in easier. It doesn't take as much force to get it to pierce through. So anyway, just rolling it along here. This one's a little bit longer. This one feels a little bit thicker too, so all I'm going to do is just add just a little bit. I'm just going to fix this shape. You can see how I just added it right around the top. Just want a nice fluffy bunny toe, like a fluffy bunny foot like the other one. This one just must have had a little bit less wool when I started, so it's an easy fix. Switching back to that double yellow for fast results. They're getting there. They're getting closer. So keep sculpting them. Add a little wool if you feel thin spots. So go ahead. Go ahead and finish up your feet. And when we're done, we're going to move along to the fun part, and that's making your little bunny's face. So I'm getting down to just a little bit of wool left. So like I said, I may have to break into my 2nd ounce, but I think I'm going to be okay. So what we're going to do is find our little model. This is a really simple little bunny head, and we're going to focus on this part of it right now. Starts out like this. The pointy end of the egg is his snout. His snout looks fat right there because we're going to build it up. So the pointy end of the egg is what we're going to be working with to start. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a little mouth flap that's going to go around. Probably doesn't make much sense now, but it will in just a moment. So I just need a small sheet of wool, and it's going to need to wrap just a little ways around the end of that bunny snout, just to about there. It's going to shrink a little, so I'm going to give it a little more leeway. So what I want to do to make this little flap is draw a line right across the middle, leaving fluff on both ends. You see it? Right across the middle, a couple times, poking gently into the pad to let the pad do the work and hold it for me. So I'm going to pull this down towards me. Without pulling it out of the pad, I can feel it right in there. And so now I'm going to draw a half circle, starting at that end of the line and ending up at the other end. You can feel it all in there with your finger. So now I'm just going to work back and forth really gently, filling in the space between the fold and the line of the half circle, felting it down. Pulling some fluff over. So now that it's felted down, I don't want to keep felting it too long while it's in the pad, so I'm going to gently peel it off the pad. It shouldn't take any pad with it. If it does, you've poked too hard. So, and then you just remember that the next bunny you make, and switch to the single. That's pushing the wool rather than piercing and felting. So I turned it over, and I'm just going to clean up this edge. You can see how I'm holding the needle almost parallel to my pad and to the shape I'm working on. That's forcing the fibers to go up that way and get them out of the way of this edge, which I want nice and clean. So there is this little half circle. You can kind of see it. It should be fairly felted. So now what I want to do is just, before I attach it to the head, hold on. I'm going to hold on right there in the middle and just gently pull off this fluff. Some of the fluff. We need some of it to attach it to the head, but we don't want the chunky stuff. So it's going to shrink a little bit. It's going to turn into this, so we're going to have to felt it and sculpt a little. So leave some room for shrinkage, and by that I mean let it overhang a little bit the end of this pointy end of the egg. So I'm just wrapped it around the very end. I'm going to take my single yellow and tack it in at one corner and turn it over, and the corner is where you stopped felting that line. It's either end of that line you first started with. So center it if you need to, pull it apart. Mine was not quite centered. And so just have this funny looking little flap thing. So now just take your hand and smooth over those fluffies. They smooth down really nice. And just tack them in. Single yellow is great for this. And just tack them in, just to hold them down. We're not going to do any more sculpting. And you have this strange looking shape with a little flap on the front. So the next thing we want to do is start working on the nose. The nose is fun, and I like to give my bunnies a little pink nose. So here I have a whole ounce of pink batting, but I really only need a fingerful. So I'm just going to pinch some off just a fingerful, that's all it takes. And so what I want to do is form a nice little nose. I'm going to form it right in my hands. Clean it up if there's anything in it. There was a black hair in it. So I'm just holding it between my fingers. I'm just going to start gently folding those fluffy ends over and then pinching them to hold them all down there. And once you get it, go around it, you got a little button shape. A little button shape between your fingers, and that's going to turn into this cute little nose on this funny shape. So look where you've centered it. Look right there for the pointy end of the egg. So you have to just make sure you keep your flap pulled down or it's going to shrink up and make it look kind of funny. So I'm just going to press this little button right at the end here, and I want to leave some flap. Can you see the flap right here? I want to leave some so I have room to draw in the front of his mouth and work with that to sculpt that in. So I don't want to attach it all the way down to that edge. I want to pull it back a little bit. So single yellow needle. So this is called an attachment stroke, and what we're doing here is we're just going to go along the perimeter of this little button shape we made and just attach it by grabbing just a few fibers from this pink wool and pushing them into the blue wool underneath. You can see I grab some fibers with my needle and just gently jiggle it. So it's not going to look like a bunny nose. I worked halfway around this way, and halfway I'm going to now go back and work on the other side and work my way up to the top. So it's not going to quite look like a bunny nose just yet, and if you have some stuff, if your button shape's coming apart, just use your finger to push it back in there. Don't use your needle too much for manipulating and pushing the wool around, because you can break your needles. So there you go. It's just barely tacked on. So I want to start sculpting around it. You can see it's a cute, almost a little heart shape. So I'm going to start sculpting a little point, that little point right here. We're going to start sculpting that in. And by sculpting, I am just going to just work around it, poking it, keeping in mind the shape I'm trying to get. Push the wool where you want it to go with the needle with the stabbing action, but you don't want to take it and snag it and pull it at all. So just push it with your stabbing action right where you want it to go. So this is the beginning of the actual sculpting part of things. You learned a little bit about it in the basic shapes, but this one we really want to control the shape. So I want to make a nice flat line across the top of the head, not have the nose sticking up so much. So I'm going to start working at this to get that. So I start squishing it, and I'm going to start sculpting. I want a nice, I don't want the nose to be raised up too terribly far. And so I'm just going to see how I'm going back and forth. I'm going to squish it again. You don't want to go very deep because you'll stab your fingers if they're anywhere near. Really keep in mind where your fingers are at all times as you do this. I'm just working across the bridge of the nose. I'm going to flatten it again here. Start going down the sides. I'm starting to picture a bunny nose and a bunny snout here. Turn it over. Don't do too much on one side without turning it and repeating it on the other side. If things start going crooked on you or this flap starts pulling up way too much, just pull it back, straighten things up, hold it where you want, and keep needle felting. If your nose is too big, you can keep sculpting and poking, but if it gets really hard, it might not look very much how you like it. So if it feels huge right now, you could tear it off and start over. Mine's sculpting down really cute. So before I can go too much further, I need to address this front flap. But before I do that, I better go over to this side and work this wool down a little bit. So I have it, it's fairly close to what I did on the other bunny. If you want a tinier nose, you can just use a tiny speck of wool. It's all up to you. Or a great big nose is fine. So now I wanted to separate the upper part of his mouth. I want to separate it, and I'm going to have to get it some dark lines in there just to hold it and shade it. But the first thing I want to do is start sculpting it in. So it's already looking like a bunny just from doing that. So I'm going to go around and sculpt this lower part of the flap where I want it. You can work it up into a smile like I did here, or you can have it more of a natural looking bunny face that doesn't smile at all. I'll show you on one side how to make him smile. Here's where you'd use a sewing needle. If you want to pull the wool to where you want it, you can see I'm going to hook right under this little flap on this side, pull it up into a little bunny smile. I'm just going to hold it with the needle there. It's kind of hard to pierce the needle into the wool sometimes. A sewing needle, they're nowhere near as sharp as felting needles. So I'm just kind of felting right down along that needle, and it'll hold that little smile into shape, and I'll be able to sculpt it down. Or if I just want to leave it more natural, I'm just going to sculpt down those fuzzy ends of that flap we made, and you can see it's a little more natural. I like the smile, so I'm going to pull this side up too, and we'll define that even more once we start with that brown line I just pointed out. So I'm going to keep sculpting it just a little bit. Make sure there's no loose flaps coming down or big cheeks sticking out. And just start sculpting it till you start to see a bunny snout. If there's big grooves and lines right here, again, just this little trick, such a simple little trick that works so well. It just covered up that line right there and made his mouth stop right where it needed to. He might have a funny little sneer when he's done. So you can see I keep going back into areas, sculpt for a little bit, and then sculpt along and then move back into the area. Things tug and change as the fibers tangle together. So it's just something to keep in mind. Oh, I stabbed myself. See, even I stabbed myself. I feel it coming and I jump away. I didn't hurt myself. Some tips to keep yourself from hurting yourself too bad. If you maintain a real gentle grip on your needle, when it hits your finger, it'll slide. If you keep a tight grip and it hits your finger, it's going to stab. So I try to keep a really light grip on my nice cushioned needles. So now we're going to work on this little shading in the dark line around his mouth. You have a couple options. Merino roving is a good thing to use because it comes all neat in these long strands. I sell brown merino roving in the shop. It's very useful for that. But if you don't have any brown merino roving, you can just take some of your wool batting. You can see it's much flatter and it's messy. It doesn't come in these nice combed strips. But that doesn't really matter because all you have to do is take a little wisp and just kind of gently pull it apart. And I'm just spinning it now. This is actually felting it. I'm starting in the middle and just rolling it between my fingers and my palm, spreading my fingers out, and that's felting it. I could give it a little spit bath with my fingers and it would felt it faster because moisture and friction felts wool. That's the traditional method. I'm getting a little moisture from the friction on my hand. So that felted it together. Or if you have a long string of merino roving, you still have to do that a little bit just to get those felted together, to get a nice little rope. Merino felts together pretty quickly. So your choice. I'm going to use my brown batting here. So what I want to do is tear this strip right in half. If it's hard to tear, you can cut it, but tearing's usually easy. So now I have two ends. I'm going to just spin these between my fingers to felt those loose ends a little bit. So you can see barely that I started along the sides of his nose, and so this you can help define the shape of your nose a little bit more. I'm going to just set this other strand aside as I work. So it's real important to hold on to where you're not felting. I'm going to hold it here with my thumb as I start to just work this right along the side of that nose. I don't want to go all the way up and around. Just want to give it some shading along the edge. So I'm going to work right down, right to the very middle where I made sculpted in that little line. And now I'm going to keep it on holding on this, holding on to that end, just to help keep that all contained in this nice strip I made. So right where I'm going to start going down, I want to make sure it's attached good and it's not going to pull out of the nose area as I work. I'm going to switch. I want a little more oomph. I'm going to switch into my double yellow because I want to push this in a little bit so that the cheeks or the front of his mouth poofs out a little bit. So I'm going to just really force that in there. I don't want this line too thick at all. It's got to be fairly subtle. And right now it looks thick, but I'm working it in there and I'm going to sculpt it in even more. So now it's just this flap sticking out there. So before I move along, I want to just do the same thing on the other side. Start it right up there along the side of his nose. Single one's better for these finer areas. So again, I've switched now to my double yellow and I'm going to really force that wool down in there. And the little cheeky things are poking right out. So now I'm going to force it up under that flap. You shouldn't have that flap so felted to your face. It should be still somewhat of a flap. You can see this double needle is just poking it right up in there, forcing it, pushing its way, making it push its way up in there, right under that flap. Here's the example. There's the flap, and you can see the brown line disappearing right under there. He's got a funny little smirk already. So I'm going to take my sharp little scissors here and I'm going to trim off that extra fuzz on both sides. He's really smiling on that side. He's got kind of a crooked face. So I don't know if you can see that, but this side here is sticking way out further. So I need to do some adjustments by squishing. And once I squish it into shape, I need to sculpt it quickly to get it to hold it. So I'm going to work it under this side as I sculpt along. This one's just a little puffier. This side of his mouth is. So there, he's looking better. He's looking happier about the whole affair. And so keep sculpting. I force this into more of a little teardrop end here. Force those in some more. Like I said, you have to go back to these areas because things sort of pull out of shape or they need a little more refining. And don't be afraid to go back into the head, the shape here, the snout, and get things into shape with sculpting. So the next thing we're going to do, there's little nose and mouth, so the next thing we're going to do is his eyes. So it's pretty simple. We're just going to set them right opposite of each other on the sides of the head. So I'm going to take my single needle and I'm just going to draw in where I'd like the eyes. I'm just felting it in little eye shapes. It starts to give you an idea of where you're going with it. So right on the opposite side, do the same size shape if you can. It's one of the tricks of making eyes is getting them somewhat the same. They don't have to be exact, but what I'm looking here is to sink a little, like an eye socket, just felt it down. The more you poke in one area, the more compact it gets and it starts sinking down. So we want to sink it in a little bit. And you can see I'm not stabbing really deep. I'm just taking nice gentle little stabs just to work that in. So next thing we need is our eye color. I used a really dark color on this one. I think I even used black. He's got some black in there too. This one I'm going to use some rich blue. Just like for the nose, you don't need very much. I got a whole ounce here, but you only need a little bit. And you don't even need as much as you needed for the nose. So what I'm going to do is pull off a wisp and break it in half. I have two little wisps. So if you remember what we did for the nose, we just took that and held it between our fingers as we rolled it along, turning it to hide all those fuzzies. And then you'll have that little button. So it might be a little harder to hide the fuzzies because it should be kind of small. It doesn't have to be the exact shape of that little indentation you just made. It'll fit in there. So if you see, I'm just putting it right on there, and I'm going to take my single yellow and do that attachment stroke again all the way around, grabbing just a few fibers of the deep blue, pushing them into the head of the light blue color. And at this point, just leave it pretty rough, and don't you can just stay right out of the middle of that shape. You don't even need to felt in there yet. You're going to be adding some color and things. So take your other wisp you had setting there and do the same thing. Keep folding those fibers over until you have a little tiny little button of wool in your fingers. Lay it on. That couldn't be much easier. They're not going to look perfectly shaped right now. We're going to be able to sculpt them still. So the next thing we want is a little bit of whites. So I like to use white merino batting. It's got short fibers in it. It's real easy to work with, and merino is one of the whitest wools around. You can rely on this to be nice and white. So what I want to do, if you remember how we made the line for the mouth area, well, this is somewhat similar. I just have this little wisp in my hand, and I just want to rub it. I don't want to roll it into a yarn like before, but I just want to rub it and let it stay flat. What that's doing is concentrating this down so you won't have to needle felt it as much. This little bit's felting this wool. You can see it got a nice concentrated little shape. It's going to be the whites of the eyes. Excuse me. So I'm going to tear off the fluff again, that same attachment stroke. I'm barely poking it. It doesn't take much to get it to hold into place. Repeat for the other side. Gonna get my scissors in there. There's a little tuft that's kind of getting in my way. The double needle is just too much for these little fine details, so sometimes the single yellow is too, and that's what the blue is for. That little fine blue single point 40 star is great when you start really getting into fine details. So make sure they're looking like they're about the same depth and they're about the same size. You can squish and sculpt. You don't want them bulging out too much, so start going over them gently back and forth, kind of sinking it all into the head. I'm going to switch to my single blue because I don't want to leave a bunch of holes and I want to really refine this shape. It's a nice fine needle that does great detail work. You can see it's just kind of coming together, pushing the white where I want it. I'm going to add a dark pupil in there too. So you can sculpt your eyes as much as you want or as little as you want. And now I just want to add a little bit of dark. So the same thing, I have these tiny little wisps of brown wool, much like I had the white. Just going to concentrate it by rubbing it into a flat shape. You can rub it between your fingers like so as well. And it's going to be slightly concentrated. It's still a little hairy though. So I'm just going to lay that right in the center. My yellow needle is going to do the initial work of getting it right into a little pupil shape. You can see how I kind of corralled the fibers with the edge of my needle by kind of circling it and then poking into the middle. So here's that other little dark thing. It's kind of hard. You can lose things on your pad really easy when you're working with the wisps of wool like this. But you know where to find more. Just always grab another one. You lose your little shape. So there are two cute little eyes. And you can go one step further and take even smaller wisps of your white merino, tear it apart, and this time you do want to roll it. What we're going to do is give these eyes the little glimmer of light. You can see that little white fleck in there. It's just the light reflecting off of it. So I'm rolling it. Hey, where did it go? There it is. If it's too big, snip it with your scissors or tear it, but you want just a little tiny dot. And that one I'm going to use, no, I'm going to use the single yellow. Sometimes I got to try one to make sure needle is not going to work. The single yellow is going to force it in there a little bit better. And I want to just lay it a little bit over the pupil, a little bit over make another one real quick. A little bit over the dark pupil, a little bit over the colored iris. Again on the other side. It's okay to pierce it away till you can barely see it. Just shove it right down in there. Okay. Simple and cute. It really came to life. So the next is the ears. We're gonna get his ears attached. Let me get my detail mess cleaned up here. Put my needles away where they're safe. And let's find the ears. These were the sample ears I had made before I started the film, and here are the big floppy ones I made showing you guys. So you can use big floppy ones, are very, very cute even on a tiny head. But the little ones are pretty cute too. But I think I'm going to stick with the little ones for this little guy. So I've got my little ear shapes out. So one side is not felted. So hold on to the felted part. You've seen me do this before with that little flap. And I'm just cleaning that up a little bit. Do the same for the other one. Just clean up that fluff. You don't want chunks hanging there. And then once you get it cleaned up on the edge, you can sort of peel it apart. So the fibers fan out all the way around. Do it for both of them. You can see which side you've felted mostly onto on the pad, and I like to put that side on the inside. The side that was down has a different look. So you can kind of see your needle marks a little more and everything on the inside. So, where do you put bunny ears? You put them right behind the eyes on the top of the head. And if you have to pull off more fiber, that's okay. So the first one I want to get into place. We don't want so much fuzz that it's covering up all of his eyes. It's going to felt in. I'm going to start right off the bat with my double yellow. And you see I'm piercing it in just right where it meets the head. So I want to get this other one on before I go too far with that so they can overlap. You can see that fluff is trying to cover his eyes, but again, it's going to felt shrink in and shouldn't be a problem. If it is totally covering your bunny's face right now, just pull a little bit of off. So just tucking that one into place. That's pretty rough. So I just separated some of that fan-shaped wool, fanned-out wool there on one of the ears, so I tore it apart so it'll kind of crisscross around this one, the other ear. And we'll have a nice attachment of the ears here in no time. So I started attaching him right in the center. Now I need to attach him a little bit on the back, so I'm just going to start working my way around. And if you remember how we smoothed out those fibers on the flap of the nose, smooth them out here too and tack those ends down. Let me get my single yellow out. So those ears are laying flat. I think I want to start making some adjustments to get them pointing where I want. I think I want them to be a little floppier, so I'm going to just start turning it. You're going to have this fluff getting in your way till you get it all sculpted and all your positioning done. And anytime it starts getting really thick and chunky, this extra fluff, just hold on tight to where you've already attached or what you've already done, and just get in there and thin it out a little bit. Again, hold on tight to what you've already done. You don't want to undo by pulling. So they're barely attached, so I'm just going to keep using my sculpting tricks now to get this all how I want it. If I want it I'm really squishing this head in, really squishing it to get this ear attached good. See how I'm kind of trying to get a little fold in the ear here? And if some of your fluff turns to big chunky felted pieces, we know how to fix that, as long as it's not in the eyes. See how that's coming along already? That squishing and poking is one of the most important parts of sculpting with wool. If you try to get everything into shape just by stabbing alone, you'll be stabbing the wool a very long time. So this fluff here is trying to come down over his eye. Hold it back and tear it off. And just start sculpting it up around his eye. When you're squishing it, like I said before, make sure to watch your fingers. You don't want to poke them. Working now on the back of his head. I want to start defining these more. They're too big where they attach to the head. So I really want to keep this folding it in half business, folding it while I work. Let me fold this other one. Folding it while I squish, I mean. Getting cuter with every poke. Alright, so just keep sculpting until you don't have any more loose fluff. If you really don't like where they're placed, you can pull and stretch. If you want to make them floppy, just bend one right over. You see how I just bent it over? Then I'm going to felt it across this edge. It's really getting thick, so I need my single yellow. I'm just felting this fold, and it's felted down. I don't like that look, so I want to fold it up just a little bit, and it still looks folded. So now I'm going to get in there on the inside and just focus on felting out that fold just a little bit, and the ear is going to stay folded. You want to make it really floppy, just flop it right over like so. Same thing. I'm not trying to pierce it into the head. I'm just trying to felt it on the surface of the ear. Some fibers are being pushed into the head. So I'm going to take that, pull them out so they're not. And then again, go back in and work on the inside of the ear. If you want to do some pink shading in his ear, this one has pink shading too. It's just a fun little thing. Get a little more of that pink wool and pull it into a really thin sheet. And you see how I just laid it right in there in the ear? Just going to really gently start tacking it down. Switch to my blue. My blue does a great job of attaching surface color and shading like this. If it's too thick and chunky in one area, just get your sewing needle and fluff it up. Hold down what you don't want, what you do want, and pull off what you don't. And there's just one little chunk in there. And like I said, you have to keep going back into areas if you want to keep the folds in. Because wool's got so much memory, it wants to go back into that flat shape. So just keep working at that inner curve. And this one, the inner curve is to be flopped right over, so the inner curve is closer to his head. So I need to get on this side and do a little more felting. See? And I can add pink shading in there too, and I'll just have to keep going back a few more times and sculpting it, getting the ears a little separated. And if there's any bulges and chunks you don't like to see, seams and things, again, I have some right there. I'm just going to cover it up with a little bit of wool. And it's as good as new. Ta-da! A tiny little cute bunny head. I hope yours is making you smile like mine is making me. And now we're going to start putting the whole body together. Let's start putting all of these little body parts together, and pretty soon our little bunny will be hopping around happily. So I like to work from the bottom up. So the first thing we're going to do is get the legs built. So the bigger egg is going to be his body. The skinny part is the neck. That'll attach to the head. And the thicker part of the egg will be the bunny's bottom area. So what we want to do is find these two shapes that we made so long ago for the legs. Oops, let me get my brown wool out of there. So you can see the fat part of the egg goes up onto the body, and the thin part goes onto the foot. So let's get this attached to the body. So I'm just kind of look at my egg and see if I see a little spot that might look like a belly. It's kind of thinner on one side. That looks like a belly. So I'm gonna put it on at an angle so they point back a little bit to support him. So I'm going to put the first one on. So if you can see how it's placed there, I'm just holding it right there in place. And I want to take my black coarse 36 triangle needle and stick it right in the middle like so. And jiggle it. I'm pulling out just enough to grab fibers from this leg shape into the body, but I'm not pulling it out of the hole entirely. That way I'm not felting it down too much. And all that's going to do is tack it into place. If I pulled on that, it would come right off. So the next thing I want to do, this attachment stroke, I've shown you on small scale on the nose and the eyes, but this is major parts going together. And we don't want them to fall apart. We want it to be a nice, durable, flexible piece. So we're getting into needle felted joint making now, is what this is. So I'm going to use this attachment stroke with my double yellow, and I'm just going to, if you can see there, I'm squishing down, I'm squishing the two parts together. I'm going to very, very carefully right along this perimeter where the two parts meet. Just going to go right along there. And I'm just needle felting a few fibers from the edge of the leg part right into the body. Go over that a couple times. Giving enough pokes to push some wool down in there. So I'm still squishing, and now I'm going to take my needle and find a few fibers along that line again where the two parts meet. I'm going to push without stabbing myself. I almost did. I'm just going to push the fibers in from the body into the leg. I'm squishing the parts together still. That helps me give a good surface, a good connection in there, holding them together. And sometimes you can go back and forth from the egg to the leg, to the leg to the egg. so I've only gone part way around, so I'm going to move it and keep squishing and just proceed. from the leg shape into the egg, from the egg into the leg. So we've gone around it, but now we have to deal with this under here. So we have to just ever so gently fold it back without peeling it off, and then continue the attachment stroke. So there's still going to be some loose, you haven't attached it all the way down, so there's still going to be part of that leg shape sticking out. So it's on there. I could still pull it off if I really tried, but it's on there pretty sturdy. I don't feel any air gaps in between. I can't poke my finger down in there, and it feels pretty sturdy. So I'm going to get the other one on, and then we're going to wrap it. So let's get the other one on first. So we want it to line up with the first one. And that black 36 triangle, again, do this jiggling. This one pretty much just shoves the wool. Shoves wool from one part into the next. It's a great tool for attaching, but I find it too rough with the fiber when you're trying to sculpt with it. So they look pretty even. And I'm just going to, again, squish and do this attachment stroke all the way around, just like I showed you on the first leg. The next thing we want to do is get these feet on. So the feet are a little bit tricky. They look quite big, and the bunny's feet are big, and they're going to shrink as we sculpt them. So we're just going to start with one. And what I want to do is I'm going to set this right down on it, perhaps about a third of the way from the heel up towards the foot. I don't want to put it right in the middle, but about a third of the way. And that's where I'm going to attach it. So again, the black needle. So this time I'm going to go right down, let me turn it so you can see, through the leg, and we use that jiggling motion. See how I'm kind of moving it without taking it out of the hole. This needle can handle this jiggling. The finer gauges will snap. So that's just to tack it into place. So now that that's tacked into place, we're going to use our double yellow, or your single will work on this one too. And we're going to use that attachment stroke and go all the way around the tip of that egg shape, pushing the fibers into the foot shape. Gets a little tricky to see what you're doing. You have to carefully move it around your pad. Don't be tempted to hold it in your hand and try to do it. You need the steadiness of the pad to keep from poking yourself and to keep everything lined up straight. So that's on there, kind of. It's tacked on. So now what I want to do is turn it so I can hold it. I'm going to hold it, here's the bottom of that egg. I'm going to turn this heel up just a little bit and let it go up. You can kind of see on my model, the heel wraps up around the tip of that egg. So just hold it there, use your double yellow, and again, this attachment stroke, what you're going to want to do is just tack that folded end right up over and around the back of that leg there. You don't want to tack it to the body, so you're going to have to kind of manipulate it on the inside of his leg to get it. Again, it's just this attachment stroke going from the foot into the leg. I'm going to keep folding it up around the tip of that egg. This is going to make the ankle and foot joint there really sturdy. You can see I'm sort of folding up that shape right around that leg. So before we go too far, we have to repeat it on the other side. About 2/3 of the way from the heel. Tack it down with a jiggling motion right down the side of the leg, and then the attachment stroke all the way around the leg into the foot shape. And then repeat the steps of folding that heel right back up over the back of the leg. Kind of gets tricky, like I mentioned, right in on the inside there. That other foot now is in my way. Good thing these needles have a little bit of a reach to them. They're still a little floppy. Everything should be secure, but before we go any further, I want to wrap these joints that we just made and make them really strong, and it'll make it like one piece of felt. So what we need is scraps, small, I should say scraps. There's never any scraps when you're needle felting. You can always make use of them. What we're going to need is just little thin sheets. You can see in relation to my hands, my fingertips. So this is going to go around this upper leg joint here, and so you can see I just laid it right on. I'm just going to take and spread it out with my fingers, just gently. I'm not worrying about the underside of the leg just yet. So I'm going to take the double's okay, the single's probably better. You don't want to over felt anything, stab too much, shove too much fiber around when you're first attacking this wrap down. So what I do is I start tapping it in, felting it into the leg, and then just gradually work up into the egg shape. But I want to leave fuzz on each side. That's gonna be where it shrinks. You don't want it to just, if you started down here, it's gonna pull it and shrink funny. So work your way out from the middle, and as you work around, just keep pulling it and feeding it around. Again, I'm gonna start in that egg shape and work my way up. And I'm going to felt down all those fuzzies on the edges at the very last once I make it all the way around. So that's not going to make it around, so I need another little sheet. Sometimes it's easier to do it in two. So I want to reach up in there. I just want to tack it in right where the other one's starting to thin out. And complete the wrap. So it's important to keep your fibers laid out flat so that they're not crisscrossing across that joint. They kind of want to. So now I'll take my double and I'll just start working it my way right up into those fuzzy areas. Takes a little bit of patience on these insides of these joints to make it not lumpy, and you will want to be careful not to drive fibers between the shapes because it'll just loosen that joint you just made. So you want to span the shapes even with your poking. So repeat that on the other leg. And we'll come back and attach the feet with a wrap. So I have both legs attached, and I have something here that doesn't make me happy. It's this groove. You can totally see the seam. So like I've showed you before, anytime you want to cover a seam, just get a nice thin piece of wool and it covers it right up. I like to try to avoid making those seams so I don't have to do this extra felting, but and that's where making sure your wool is spread out even and you pull off lumpy stuff before you try to felt it in. That's where those tricks come in, but every now and then it just gets seams or gets lumpy. So now we need a couple little pieces of wool to take care of the feet. So you see I have a little sheet, a little fluffy sheet this time. So I want to just lay it out right across the top of his foot. And I tacked it right into the very top, and the rest is fluffy, you see. And so what I want to do is just start working it. I don't want to obliterate his foot, so pull off any. I mean, obliterate his leg. But what I'm doing is working it up towards the ankle there, and it's going to wrap all the way around that foot. Again, I'm going to just needle felt spanning the two shapes I'm wrapping. And then just keep going along and needle felt all this fluff down. If it gets too fluffy in any spots, just pull a little off, holding on to the work you just did tightly. And get under this leg here. And I'm just sculpting now. Get all those fuzzy wool poked in and sculpting what I just added on. So I'm going to let you watch me sculpt this foot, and then before we move along to the next one. So it's kind of flat, it's kind of not too bunny shaped, and it's not all that sturdy yet, so it needs more felting. So here I am around the back of the ankle. I'm just going to go ahead and keep felting. So one thing that's happening, my double needle is starting to make it bounce too much. It's hitting it instead of gliding in. So I'm going to change to single yellow. Going at it with a really light touch, trying to keep some life in it. If it's soft here, and that's okay, I want it soft. So now I'm going to work in on this inside of his foot. Around towards the back. I'm still sculpting in these wraps. I'm getting a nice shape of a foot here. You can see how I'm felting in these edges to shrink this foot down a little bit. And just keep going around and around until you don't see a bunch of loose fiber. You shouldn't be able to peel much off. But you don't want to go so far that you're making it hard or just shrinking away to nothing. There's a lot of air in it because it can feel really alive when there's a lot of air and it's got a lot of motion. If you keep going, it'll get small and dense and it'll be more of a little statue. And we're going for just a little lively bunny instead of a statue. And there's a big seam running across the top that I'm not happy with, so let's just put a fresh layer right over that foot. Takes just a few minutes when you have to felt down a layer to cover things, but it's worth it to get this really nice seamless look. And again, I use this sideways felting motion a lot. If I put a lot of pressure on the needle with my finger like this and do it, I'll break it. But I just hold on to the grip back here and it seems to be fine with this sideways motion. It's the rolling it around that I find a little frustrating. You have to really flop these things around to stab at them from all the angles they need. So that is sculpting a foot. You can sculpt a little arch in. I don't know what kind of arches bunnies have, but this is basically the same as I do human feet, without toes perhaps, and maybe not quite as long, but same kind of techniques. So I'm sculpting in a shape. There's the heel. So you can see the difference, how much that shrunk compared to the other one. And so I still want to do a little more sculpting, make this a little thinner ankle. You can see on this one, it's a little bit thinner, and it just feels a little soft to me. And I'll keep refining that shape of the foot. It's tricky to get the top of the foot, the front of the foot, but it's important so that it's not loose and fluffy. So if you can see how I'm felting, I'm just carefully picking it up off the pad and sticking my needle right down into the middle of the foot through the toes. That made it feel denser and look a little bit better. And if you remember how we put those lines on the nose, that's exactly what you would do to put lines for toes. You can see the little lines, and when you felt it in, it lets the other layer poof right out, and it looks like nice little toes. So I'm going to keep sculpting, and when I come back, we will proceed with the body. And when we come back, you should have both feet all done, and I'll sculpt it anyways. I'll show you how to add the lines, but go ahead and keep sculpting both feet until it feels like a little bunny to you. Arms on, front legs or paws, whatever you want to call them, but the first thing we need to do before that is get the head on. So, pretty simple where the head goes, right at the top of the egg. So this attachment's very similar to some of the others we've done, but when we tack it into place, we want to kind of be careful where we do this. I'm going to go right down through where his ears go, shoving fiber from the little egg into the big egg. You can keep their heads a little tilted, and if you see a little angle that you love, hopefully you can hold it in place and keep it there. But those adjustments can be made when it's all done being attached. So don't get too attached to a cute little expression when a little cocked head's looking at you. See how cute? So anyways, it's just tacked in. And so now I'm going to, just the same way as I did the other parts, squish them together and go around that with an attachment stroke. I'm pushing it this time from the egg into the head, and then I'm going to repeat it and go from the head into the body. And work my way around the head towards the back. I'm going to end up under his little chin. So you see how I gently turned it and kept holding all the parts together. I don't want to let go of anything because it's not securely attached yet. I don't want his head to jump away without his little body. So I'm not going so deep that I'm going all the way through to my fingers on the other side. And I'm squishing his face so that'll all come back into play. I'll remember right where it was. He's still got a cocked little head and it's cute. I'm probably going to go with that. So again, like I did under the leg, just kind of tilt it back while squishing it in to find that perimeter where the two parts meet. And you'll felt them together. So I've gone all the way around. I don't feel any air pockets like before. We're going to be able to adjust him to help him stand better when he's done and he has arms on. So the next thing I want to do is wrap his neck. And you should have all kinds of little fluffs of wool laying around that you've been pulling off. Or you can tear another piece from your batting. But just like I wrapped the leg joints, I want to wrap the neck. So I'm going to start at the back of the neck. See, I'm just sort of spreading those fibers out a little bit. And I want to span the two pieces rather than drive fibers into the middle. So I start at the middle and work my way out, but I don't drive them in. I'm spanning them in with every poke. Spanning the two pieces. Get his ear up out of the way. He's going to look like he has a ruffly collar on for a moment, but that'll change as soon as we've felt it down. It might inspire you to want to even get him dressed. If you've taken any of my doll making workshops with Santa or my dolls workshop, you know how to get them dressed, and you could get your bunny dressed using the same techniques. Because I've heard some bunnies do wear clothes. This bunny's not going to, though. So here, let's keep that wrap going right around. Again, span the two surfaces without driving fibers between them. So once you have that attached all the way around, then you can go back around and start felting all those loose fibers down. Cover any seams like I've showed you already. There's a seam I'm going to have to cover right. The first thing I do though before I cover a seam is I make sure that I can't blend it. Sometimes that sideways poke really helps you blend those seams away, and here I've got a really fine blue 40 star, and that seam's just vanishing, so I'm not going to worry about that one. That's how you make your finished surface really smooth too, is these really short little sideways jabs. So his head's looking that way, and I love it. Gonna adjust his ear back down a little bit. We'll have room for all that, and the next thing we're gonna do is get his little paws on. So we made these thin little egg shapes, and I'm gonna put the fat end. We're gonna have very thin little shoulder areas. So there's no surprises here. Tack it in. Using the jiggling motion with the coarse black needle. This is a smaller shape, so I'm going to use the single yellow for the attachment stroke rather than trying to work the thicker blue needle in there. Going around it on both sides, and then when I'm ready, still adjusting where I want it to go. So I'm going to fold that back. You can see how I folded it back there, and I'm going to continue attaching that part. So before I even move along, I'm going to wrap that. And then you'll repeat the steps for both sides. So the wrapping is the same technique, span the two parts, and then start working your fiber around. This gives nice, seamless, flexible joints. And repeat on the other side, and then we'll sculpt it all into a little better shape and put the last of the details on. So your bunny should have all its limbs and its head on and be all put together, and it may be toppling backwards like mine. So let's address that first. One of the things with the feet is that when you wrap that thing, the heel up around, when you wrap that heel up around there, it makes for like a rocker bottom. So what we want to do is try to flatten that out. Let's stick a sewing needle in there first of all and just give me something to work with. See how I stuck it right through the end? Just going to give it a little tug. I don't want to rip anything off. Just stretching that out. And you can see that's already pulled that heel down a little bit. So while he's standing still, I'm just going to take my double yellow needle and poke down right down through his leg, right into that little stretched area I just pulled with the needle. You see it's flattened it out a little bit, and then just want to sculpt it down, just so it's not such a rocking horse. We don't want a rocking rabbit. We want him to be able to stand on his own. So that flattened it, and you can do the same thing with the other, but he stands on his own very well. So just try to square out, just flatten out that round arch, that round heel, and you should be fine. The other thing is you sometimes need to flatten that down right there, that you can feel the end of the egg for the leg shape in there. And so go ahead and just keep sculpting and messing around with that until your bunny will stand on his own. I have a lot of seams and things like that where I wrap joints, and his back's a little out of whack from all this joint. So I want to sculpt in a shape that I like. So just kind of pinched it and give him a little thinner sides and narrower back, and just gently going over that. Got my double needle for that. And anywhere there's seams that I'm not happy with, I see one right there that I've been trying to get out, but it just keeps reappearing, so we'll just fix that once and for all. And so now I just want to go over the whole surface of this thing, smoothing it out. The double reds are pretty good for this. If they get too difficult to pierce in, then switch to the double blue. And when that gets too difficult, you switch to the single blue. But what I'm doing, this is a star blade. It has lots of barbs, and the barbs are close to the tip. This is a 38 star, and it's a great surface needle because those barbs are close to the tip and there's a lot of them. I don't have to jab very far, and this sideways motion is really felting down the surface. As it tightens up, though, it's going to start leaving bigger holes and be a little harder to pierce. So that's when I would switch to the blue. So you're going to see that I've flopped this guy around a lot as I'm doing this. This is going to make sure the surface is nice and felted, that his arms aren't going to fall off. You just keep going around all parts of him. Anywhere you get a seam you don't like, cover it up and give it a few extra minutes of felting. But you want to go over his whole body. And it's going to get really nice and smooth. But remember, it's wool, so don't worry if there's some fuzzies showing, because it's supposed to. Wool is fuzzy. The other thing about the red is it can really felt down your project because it grabs more fibers. So if it's starting to shrink away and you don't want it to shrink, you want to just keep its cute shape, you just want to finish it, then grab the double blue. It's much more of a gentle felter than that red one. You can leave parts of him fuzzy if you want. Here's another trick I do. If his legs seem way far apart, you can squeeze them together here. See how we grab the yellow. I'm just squeezing them together and just felting the belly in between. And that gives for a little slimmer profile, a little slimmer stance. And he's still standing on his own, but sometimes when you shrink things and rearrange them, then you have to go back to the feet and work them. So, he's getting nice and smooth. We can add more detail. If you remember that how we made those strings for the face. Same thing for the feet. For the feet and the paws. If you want, there's no rules for it. But I just tore off a little piece of that. Let's see, where's that single yellow? So I'm just piercing it into where I want it to start. You can go as far as putting rosy pink cheeks on, just like we did the shading in the ears. Rosy pink anything if you want, the belly. We can't forget the tail, though. The tail's a great thing to use all the fluff. So I guess I stopped right there. So let me back up. Two lines usually suffices. And just drive it in just enough so that a little bit of the body poofs out just a little bit to give a nice effect of toes. Same exact thing on the paws. Nothing different on the hands. Maybe there are hands on this one. So you can see how simple that is. So let's move along to the tail. So I'm just going along gathering up some of these fluffs that were left. Anytime I thinned out a piece or shrunk something up. So I'm just kind of mixing them together, tearing them up with my fingers. So that's going to become his little tail. We're going to felt it down a little bit, mainly so it will stay. Let me force some of these fibers deep into his body. Don't want to force too many, so it's very messy. So let's straighten up this little messy tail. Switch. That single yellow didn't seem to be pushing enough fibers for me. The double one is working good. So you can keep going till you have a hard little ball, or you can keep it fluffy looking. If it looks too big, you can use this trick of holding what you've already felted in tight and thinning it out. You're going to have to rework it a little. So, I think we are about done making a bunny. And with a little practice, they take no time at all. They're great fun. Cute, and they should make you smile. Thank you so much for joining me, and have fun making bunnies!